Welcome to Punch Card Investing, a weekly show dedicated to all things value investing. Whether it be analyzing companies, pitching ideas, or discussing moves by the best investors in the world, we're trying to get one step closer to punching an investment off of our cards. Let's get started.
I messed up that intro clip again. I forgot to loop it. But thank you, intro man. As consistent as ever, even after we took the week off for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to anyone who celebrates here in the States. So that was last week, and that was a good time. Anyone do any traveling? Jason, you do any traveling for the holiday?
Yeah, I did. I went to Maryland and Washington, D.C.
Oh, right. Yeah, I saw you were talking with some high-level people. You made that Twitter post.
I was there in D.C., yeah.
Yeah.
High-level people give me good information. So, yeah, it was a great trip. Yeah, just a lot of fun to travel. Did anybody else do some traveling recently?
I made the trip up to Chicago to see some family, and actually my mom is here today. She just flew in, first time seeing the Houston house. So we're hosting my mom for the weekend, and then she'll go back to Chicago. So we did a little back and forth, kind of zigzagging in the middle of the country here. But yeah,
they're gonna get to know you real well on those flights from Houston to Chicago.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, a lot of United flights lately. So I've been racking up airline points a lot. With the Chase Sapphire Preferred is a great all around card. So I've paid for a couple tickets at this point because we're doing so much flying. You get like 5 times points when you book through Chase. So it's quite good. Anyways, Tom, Chris, any traveling for whatever purpose?
No turkey eating over here.
Yeah.
Business as usual.
Yeah, no turkey eating. I've been traveling quite a bit for the day job. I was just telling you guys before we went live, I've just woken up from like an hour afternoon nap. So we'll see how well I'm functioning mentally after that.
You got that good routine going.
Yeah.
Well, in this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit. Jason came up with this idea, so I'll give him the credit. But we wanted to do sort of a best ideas show that isn't officially a best ideas show, but kind of talking about what we're actually focusing on, because that changes from time to time. We're always trying to improve as investors. We're always looking at new opportunities. So kind of just a way to talk about different ideas without really talking about a formalized like best ideas show, if that makes any sense. Before we get into that, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff, and check out the links in the description below. Got our affiliate links down there, as well as our link to the Discord if you're not in there already, which is pretty lively nowadays. So definitely go and check that out, and you can meet other like-minded investors or not like-minded investors kind of in this broad umbrella that we call the value investing space. So with that said, what are we looking at, guys? What's top of mind today? Yeah, Jason, I think I'll kick it to you because you came up with the idea. You're very good at the topic ideas.
Thank you.
Well, what are you working on right now or interested in?
Well, I mean, usually the best idea goes last, so I don't want to be tough for you guys to follow, but I have a bet.
You got to get us warmed up.
I've got a maybe a best idea and a worst idea. If you want to talk the worst idea later, I'm happy to talk it. I say worst just because it's a super small position in a rocket company. But my best idea, what I've been working on, what I've been buying like extremely heavily, is Races over in Turkey, and it went up a lot in the last couple months. It's up basically like over 100% year to date in US dollars, or maybe not year to date, like in the 1 year or whatever. And the travel really influenced me. I was traveling. I was kind of like, I was in the airport. I was on the plane with the people. And I was like, I don't want to be on the plane with the people forever. I want to fly private. And so I was kind of angry and thinking I want to get really rich, honestly. And I was thinking about what I want to do with my portfolio. Monish comes out with a video. He talks about Races, and everything just kind of connected there on a neighborhood street in Maryland at a family member's house. I was walking outside in the cold, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make this a bigger position, and I bought more. So pretty simple story. Happy to get into it as much as you want to, but I've been buying at a price that's 100% higher than my initial position. So no anchor issues over here.
How has the equation changed with discount to liquidation value and all that sort of stuff, Jason?
So in this most recent video, I've got it pulled up here, so I just want to give everyone the title. Monish's channel, Monish Power Q&A session with students at William and Mary College, November 8th, 2022. And it came out on November 25th at the 23-minute mark. He talks about liquidation value, and he says that when he bought the company for a market cap, when the market cap was 20 million US, the liquidation value at the time was around 800 million. He said they've done some good things with the business in that time since 2019. And he said the liquidation value is $1 billion. And he said that's in depressed times that we're in right now, I guess over in Turkey. And he said in normal times, it could be 1.5 or 2 billion. So liquidation value, 1 billion, could be 1.5, could be 2. The market cap, when you bring it back to dollars, I think it's around 260 million right now. So I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking, okay, if it is worth $1 billion, like at liquidation value, not intrinsic value, not what it could become, factoring in no growth, but just what the assets minus the debt are worth. If that is $1 billion, and I'm buying it for it on the trip, it kind of ranged from 250 to 270 million. That's like a 3 to 3.5 bagger right there with very little debt. And I compared that to other things in my portfolio, including Ceritage. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to go for it, because on like the low end, if it's a 2 or 3, that's pretty cool. And if it's, higher than that, 1.5, 2 billion, and then maybe one day it could grow even further if I'm able to keep holding at least some of it. It could be 7, 8, 9 times or 10 times. So that's kind of the liquidation story right now. Liquidation value.
How much, what do I call it? How much scrapping have you done in trying to figure out these asset values? Is it mostly a clone of Fabrai, or how deep have you been able to go so far?
So you say mostly, I say shameless.
Sure.
It's a shameless clone, and I'm very proud of that, very okay with it. There's a couple other factors. I talked to Eunice on my podcast, and that was a good conversation. So that kind of gave me. Thank you.
I watched it the other day. Yeah, it was well done. He's in the chat too. He's hyped that we're talking about races.
I mean, every week he tells everyone, you guys got to talk about Turkey, and someone's finally listening to Eunice. So we didn't talk about racists that much, but just hearing him saying, yeah, I know those guys. People know those guys. They're known. Him just talking about the Turkish market in general. I just got it top of mind. And then I want to give a shout out to Sean Lewis on Twitter. Sean Lewis, SEAN. Sean Lewis. He's kind of my man on the ground in Turkey. I think he's somewhere in the United States. He's not in Turkey, but he's very good at following things there. And he's got a tweet from November 29th, and he talks about, I think it's the son at the company, the father-son team. I think it's the son, the executive. His ownership has gone from like 5% to 10%, and he's been buying as recently as like November 18th and 21st. So I've been following that as well, and that also gives me a lot of confidence. But that's pretty much as far as it goes. I'm not going over there. I'm not digging through the real estate. I'm just kind of cloning. If there are any problems with the lira and the dollar, and it gets inflated away, and this big win I have gets inflated away, my backup plan is just to move to Turkey and sell it in lira and live off the lira. So I've got a plan.
Live off the lira until that gets inflated away too, or
well, it's a lot of lira, Jack.
More each day.
Yep.
So trust and believe the shameless cloning process.
Yeah, shameless cloning. Yeah. Big position, and that's been to me, it's my best idea compared to other things in my portfolio, and it's been drawing me. So I think it was like a 20 to 25% bet with some growth factored in there. Right now it's sitting at a third. And that's where it's at.
That's a pretty big bet for, I guess it really is shameless.
Jack, you'll maybe find this interesting. When I took it from what I took it recently, 27, 28, something like that percent. I said, let me just go all the way to a third. So I bought a little more. And that's a big bet, like you're saying. And there's a chance it could not work out. And so what I did is I took margin off the table. I had maybe 10% margin in there, and I got rid of that. And I sold some stuff to get rid of that margin. And my mindset is like, okay, I'm settling in for the long haul here. I need to be fully in control of my destiny. I can't have any risk that stuff could drop and I could get a margin call, or I just don't want to deal with that stress in general. So it is a big bet, but I did some very intentional things around it to kind of prepare myself for what could be a very cool situation over the next few years, a rough situation, whatever. But getting rid of the margin was one of my preparations.
Yeah, no debt always feels good.
Yeah.
Someone who has a bunch of debt relative to my net worth, at least. Frank, Tom, have you guys looked at Racist at all in any detail? I know it's been on the radar for who knows how long at this point, thanks to Monish Fabrai mainly. But have you guys done any digging there at any point?
Yeah, not really. I don't think I can even access it, probably regardless of how hard I try to do that from New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different everywhere.
Do you have an airport, Tom, in New Zealand?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've used it. You've gone over to Omaha. That's a long trip. Yeah. To me, Racist is something that if you can't buy it in your country, you get on the plane and you figure out how to buy it.
Are you sure it's you or it's to the people you're cloning?
To both. I mean, that's how I'm kind of feeling. I really, Munger's got a quote out there about like, you don't get many chances in life to like really get some big gains, and you got to take full advantage of them when you do. So that's kind of where I'm at with this investment. A lot of people kind of say that they have trouble accessing it from their country, which is unfortunate. But it's something I really had to dig to figure out, and some other people have as well. Thank you, Eunice.
We got a question in the chat for what brokerage is best for Racist. It's different for every country, I'm sure. But where did you get it through Fidelity?
I've never answered that question. I get it a lot. There's I don't answer it for a few different reasons, but there's it is out there in terms of how to get it. It's online. It's on YouTube, and if you really want to look for it, it's there. You may not have to look that hard right now, but it's there.
All right. Are we not recommending brokerages because of what's happened to certain less than ideal brokerages?
This episode is sponsored by FTX.
Yeah, we wish. No, it's just for a few different reasons. But I mean, one of them honestly is I had to work really hard to figure that out, and I don't want to take the fun away from anyone. So, as Munger has said, or Monish has said,
it's all about the fun here. Okay,
yeah,
the fun of the grind. We'll leave. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. So Racist. Anything else beyond Racist? The Racist clone that's got your attention lately?
Well, I bought a stock today for a little bit of fun. I had to look.
Speaking of fun,
keep the fun going. Very small position, like extremely small. It's not even in the after dinner investor portfolio, but the ticker is AJRD. Aerojet Rocketdyne Holdings. And I don't know if you guys do this, but I think Monish has talked about an investor named Raj who passed away recently from India, and half his billions of dollars of wealth came from one investment that he held for a very, very long time, held forever. But he said the guy would do a lot of different stuff as well, a lot of different kind of investing. And he talks about that with Buffett as well. Like Buffett does these things like buy the Japanese companies recently where it's like, that's not going to move the needle for Berkshire, but he does it. And Monish said guys like that do that to kind of work out their mental horsepower and keep them busy and keep them doing stuff, even though it's not going to move the needle much. And I find myself doing that as a lot. So like sometimes I'll buy some different options. I'll buy a stock like this after reading about it for just a couple hours because I had heard about it before a little bit. Something clicked and I wanted to buy it. But it's like way less than like a maybe less than a 1% position, and I just do that stuff. I don't know, just to kind of work my muscles, if you will. But I don't really touch the big bets. But this was one of those things. So like, if you Google, why don't you Google Aerojet Rocketdyne stock, and what you'll see is an article from Reuters, and I can do you one better and put it in the chat. But basically, my understanding of this company is they have some kind of rocket system that the military uses and that sort of thing. They're like the only ones that have it. Earlier this year, I think the company's General Dynamics, a big military contractor company, made an offer. That offer got rejected by the government. They said, no, you can't make this offer, that we're going to disapprove this deal. And there was a fight at this company between who I think is the former chairman. He might still be the chairman, I'm not sure, but a big stockholder. He said, no, I don't want to take this offer because it's not enough. And the current CEO, she said, no, we do want to take this offer. And then they let the shareholders vote. And the shareholders voted with the current CEO. And they said, yeah, we want that $51 offer or whatever it was. And so that deal doesn't happen, but the shareholders vote with her and keep her and say, yeah, we want to sell this. Like, she's saying she wants to sell it. This is my understanding. And then this article comes out the other day and says there's like at least 4 suitors trying to buy this company, and a deal could get done. If you search on this article for December, it says a deal could be signed as early as the end of December. And I'm just making a small little bet here that this company with some maybe $200 to $300 million worth of land around Sacramento with net cash is, and with the CEO that wants to sell it, is my understanding, and with some activist shareholders, is going to get sold for maybe a little bit more than the $54 that I bought it at today. And it could happen within the next few weeks. And if it does get a 10% bump or whatever, that could be like an over 100, 200% annualized rate of return, because it's such a short time period. Just having a little fun. But I had looked at this in Value Line like many months ago, kind of followed it a little bit, and popped back up on the radar today. Thought it's something interesting to share with you guys. There's also a great write-up on Value Investors Club recently from September.
I do want to talk about that, the working the brain muscle idea in a bit. But you're saying this is really just a pure special situation, a little bit of merger arbitrage, sort of.
Yeah, merger workout.
Main idea.
Yeah, merger workout, and I actually took a little money because I'm not doing margin right now, Jack, because 33% of my investments are in Turkey with racists. So I'm keeping things conservative, if you will. I took a little conservative, yes. No margin, Jack. Yeah. But I see what you're saying. I took a little bit of money from my Activision stake, which is a merger workout, which probably won't move much in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Borrowed it from that, if you will, put it into this, and I'll move it back probably either way into that. So that's where I got the funds. So
I back to the having something to do idea. Isn't that what a lot of people would call a distraction? Aren't there plenty of things to focus on? Why don't you feel that it's like pulling away from maybe your
because what's pulling away from, Jack? It's pulling away from me going, oh my God, 33% of my money's in Turkey, or it's pulling away from me going, you know what? I've held Ring Energy for like many years. I think it still has a lot of room to run. It's not running there yet. I'm going to sell it and incur a huge tax hit and do something stupid. So basically, I'm saying it distracts me in a good way, where I can take the last 10% or so of my portfolio, do some interesting things, keep my mind engaged, learn about leaps, do some options with Paramount. I did some options recently with Suncor, made like 70% very quickly. Do stuff like this. And basically practice in this case, I'm practicing my merger workout muscle. Like, I have a hunch here based on all these factors that this could play out pretty good, pretty quickly. I kind of want to just test if that's accurate, get some experience with the merger workout. And that's kind of what so I'm intentionally trying to distract myself so I don't do something stupid with the very small amount of stocks that make up a huge amount of my portfolio, Racist, Alphabet, and Ring Energy, to make sure I don't do something stupid there. Intentional distraction.
I see.
Jason, do you still have an investment checklist that you use? I find that slows me down a lot. I know that's something you talked about a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if that's still part of the process.
I do have it, and I do try to follow it for the big ones. I do a much better job of sitting down and actually walking through it for the wonderful business holding checklist and my sell checklist. When I bought this today for, again, less than 1% of my portfolio, I didn't sit down and go, do they have a union? Blah, blah, blah. And I almost find like I know a lot about persuasion and just, when a lot of super investors say they don't talk about their investment because then it could influence their thinking. I know a lot about that stuff. And I think it's almost hopeless in some regard. Like when I want to buy something, I'm pretty much going to buy it. So I kind of use the checklist as a constant way to be thinking about things. So that's kind of how I've been using it. But it definitely can slow you down a ton if you just sit there and have to go through everything every time you want to make an investment, even if it's a very small investment. But I know, like for me, I would have definitely missed some nice gains recently if I used it kind of as a way just to say no all the time. But again, I kind of look at my investment portfolio in two areas. I have the stuff that makes up 70% of the pie. That's the big stuff. And then I have these little small positions that I just have some fun with. And that's kind of my story, Jack.
So
I'd be curious what you guys.
The churn portion of the portfolio, and then the long term portion of the portfolio. Is that kind of how? Instead of core satellite, it's like churn hold.
Well, it just depends what happens. Like some stuff goes up very quickly, and it's not the kind of stuff you want to hold for a very, very long time. Like an oil company, say that goes up very quickly. Time to sell. I know a lot of people. Maybe it's the name of the show I'm on right now. They only want to punch so many cards. They don't want to do a ton of investments. I kind of take that approach with a lot of my investing, but I think there is also ways for different individuals to make money. And sometimes that means moving quick.
It's fair enough. Yeah. Because there are special situations. We've talked about them a number of times here where you're not going to hold it for 10 years. You might not even hold it for 10 months, or it might even be 10 weeks and so on. So,
well, imagine if you bought Ceritage a few months ago at $5, if you were lucky enough to buy it at the bottom, and then within a month it goes up 100%. Maybe you made a 20% bet, and then it becomes like a really large part of your portfolio.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to sell it down a little bit.
I think rebalancing is a little less objectionable to some folks. I think what people maybe get most concerned about, I certainly feel this sometimes, is being spread too thin. And the idea is that the argument is that it's better to go deep and really know what you're doing, or at least know as much as you can about something before you make the bet. Whereas if you're spread more thin, then that's harder to do, and maybe you're more likely to be wrong. But you can make the argument both ways because you're also more diversified. I know that's a dirty word here, but there's a benefit to both approaches.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is like just that every individual is different, and like there's a lot of different ways to make money with investing. And to me, the smartest thing is to do what works for you as an individual and to know yourself. And so
that's where temperament comes in, like you're getting at with having your sort of attention grabbing portion of the portfolio that's much smaller than the part that you'd rather leave alone. Like that makes sense. So that works in your case for keeping you off of the stuff that you're trying to hold long term, which makes sense.
Yeah, and it really works. That stuff is I really do a good job of it, or it makes it a lot easier to not think about that stuff whether you're way up or way down or just kind of flat with something. If you're focusing on other things, that works for me and my temperament. Speaking of attention grabbing, before the show, Frank mentioned he had sold something down. I almost fainted when I heard it. I'd be curious why he did that and what's he moving into or looking at, but I'll throw it back to you, Jack.
Yeah. Well, should we go, Frank? I don't know what's got your attention now, but I'll certainly talk about that blockbuster move in the history of the show, at least.
Yeah. So probably my biggest investment decision, I would say, in a very long time. And that's coming from a sell rather than a buy. So Kelly Partners Group, most people know, is a significant portion of my portfolio, or at least was. It went as high as, I think it got over 50% at one time, but usually sat around the 40% kind of mark. I didn't buy it at that size. That's mostly from good performance over the past 2 years or so. But I decided to cut that position essentially in half, maybe even a little bit more. It's now about 15% of the portfolio or so. So a significant trim, and I mostly just rebalanced with that those funds, and kept a little bit of cash as well. But yeah, a pretty big change in the portfolio for me.
Why?
That's a professional interviewer right there. That was a great question.
So two main things. Well, there's a few moving parts to it, I guess. And selling, I say this all the time, but it's the hardest part of investing. And when it's the biggest position that's performed the best, it's a hard decision to make. Yeah. But a few things. Firstly, the size of the position. It's always been in the back of my mind that it's a significant portion of the portfolio. I paid about 5 or 6 times owner's earnings for the business, and now I don't know the exact numbers, but it's probably closer to 25 or 30 times owner's earnings. So valuation, and then how much of the portfolio it's making up, that's part of it. But I wouldn't usually sell just for that reason. I was willing to hold, but that was always like in the back of my mind. But I think the first kind of negative news is coming out on the company, and maybe most people interpret some of this as good news, but I don't. So firstly, they kind of come on the same day, but firstly, it's the international expansion that Brett has been talking about for a while, and that he's kind of going ahead with that, and in my opinion, moving too fast into taking on a lot more risk and maybe getting rid of some of the competitive advantages that he has. In Australia, in the canning industry, it's proven that Kelly Partners has been successful and can continue to grow just through these acquisitions, as well as the organic growth over here. And there's a long runway for doing that here in Australia. So to take on more risk overseas is completely unnecessary, in my opinion. It's something I would probably like to see him explore later on, but now that that's happening soon, and if he really does start to push that, that's a big red flag.
Hey, Frank, do you mind if I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, go for it.
Monish talks about like making bets. The managers making bets. Like at Amazon, they make a lot of bets, a lot of small, little, risky bets, but they're very little, and stuff pays off sometimes, and he likes that. And then he talks about the opposite of that at Meta, making a huge bet with a ton of free cash flow. So this being a sell factor for you, the international expansion, is it just him doing? Is it just this company deciding to do that gives you concern, or is it the way they're doing it? Like, are they taking on debt to do it, or is it just more the decision, or is it how they're doing it? I'd be curious.
So I'm fine that it's kind of when they're doing it. That's the problem. It's kind of the decision of management to rush that. And I feel like maybe that's giving a sign of maybe being overly optimistic about the Australian growth. That might not be true. It could just be, and at this point, there's nothing really happening. It's a small kind of bet, I guess, that they're trying to make. And it could do really well. Like, I believe that Brett's done the due diligence to decide that these markets he can be just as successful in as he has been in Australia. I'm just less convinced, and I think the tax systems are very different. Obviously, there's similarities between any Western type of country, but the US and the UK are the main places he's looking to expand, and it's just unnecessary risk when the pool for acquisitions in Australia is so large. Like, he's such a small portion of that total addressable market here at the moment. So to risk taking on a different tax system, different prices to pay, different kind of culture, all of these things kind of tied in, it's unnecessary. To do it at some point is absolutely fine. And again, it could work out and turn out to be very successful, and Kelly Partners becomes a much better company than it is today. And I haven't sold the position completely. Like, I'm still willing to hold and ride that bet out and see what happens. But at the allocation I was at, I didn't like that as much. But the second thing, and probably more detrimental to the business maybe, is within that announcement, we kind of found out that Brett's compensation is tied to revenue, about 1% of revenue. And at the time where he's pushing a message of growth internationally, which of course could improve the top line, that's going to benefit him directly with the compensation he's kind of getting from that. There was also some little comments on Twitter that he made where he kind of was caught out lying, maybe accidentally, maybe he didn't mean it this way, but he said he wasn't part of the remuneration board or the decision making for him to have that made, but he is part of that. He doesn't vote specifically in relation to something that involves him, so maybe that's the confusion there. But yeah, just a few things all adding up together, making me less willing to have it as half the portfolio, essentially.
And it's even more concerning when he already owns half the shares. So this like revenue tie is definitely a red flag, to say the least.
I think that's probably the one thing saving you from cutting it all together by the sounds of it, isn't it, Frank?
Yeah, so the saving grace to that is that he's still so aligned with shareholders that
right.
It doesn't matter too much. But he also is the controlling shareholder, essentially. So he can make whatever decision he wants, and shareholders don't really have the power to change that. So, it is a bit of a saving grace.
For compensation to be tied to revenue? That's not ringing a bell with me. I don't think I've heard of that before, but it might be common. I don't know.
I'm sure it's probably common. I don't think it's unheard of. There's people do it all different ways. But I don't see why he wouldn't tie it to something like the bottom line growth, for example. Like, I don't know why revenue, like, yeah, I don't know. It is
probably because if you're reinvesting into growth, and then how are you actually calculating profits? It's a lot more consistent when you just do the top line.
He does specifically report owner's earnings, though, which you'd think would account for a lot of the noise.
Yeah, maybe there's
even
more.
Just net profit after tax would be a fine metric to use. And they can clearly define that. There's plenty of people that do it. Or he's such a large shareholder that I'd rather him not be taking barely any money at all. I'd rather him take a very small portion, the Buffett style approach, which he seems to be very fond of and talks about a lot. But this kind of spreads a little bit of the opposite message, I guess.
How long did it take you to make this decision, Frank, between the time you first got the inkling to sell something?
So it's not the first time I've sold shares of Kelly Partners. I've sold smaller amounts, just kind of trimming back the position when it got too large to put money elsewhere into ideas that I thought maybe offer a higher return. But that was pretty small chunks. But yeah, I've always just, like I said, I've been sitting on it for a while, getting more and more concerned. So once that news kind of came out, only a few days before my mind was made up that I was going to trim it, and that's what I did.
Then Tom's interview dropped. And that was the nail in the coffin.
But so I don't know. It's a big decision to make, and it's not like a complete sell. I'm still very optimistic about the company, just not put it as 40% of my portfolio type of optimistic. Now it's just more like a regular position with a few other companies that are weighted the same way.
Anything you bought? You said you rebalanced just like generally into other stuff you own. Was there anything out there that stood out specifically? Like, oh, I'm really glad I get a chance to buy this now, or was it just everything?
Well, it's pretty much everything in the portfolio at the moment. It's all like I'm still optimistic about all the companies I hold. That's why I hold them, and they're almost all down year to date. So I was happy to rebalance in companies that I'm already comfortable in, and they've all gotten cheaper due to the market conditions. So there was a few I was happy to add to, but
cool. No
one specific, I guess.
Manu says that Frank's lifestyle was more tied to KVG than Brett Kelly's. You can make an argument, at least at a time.
Well, it was actually, I guess, a significant portion of my net worth, I guess. I don't know how much it would be, but very significant. So
that, your content, especially early
everything.
On. It was big. And now you're here. Joining us on Punch Card.
With no beer.
Turning your position.
Where's the beer, Frank?
No beer today, just the sparkling water.
Okay.
Keeping it nice and calm.
It's a G-rated show today. Tom.
Yes.
What do you? What's going on? You just dropped. Speaking of Kelly Partners, you just dropped the Brett Kelly interview. which I have not had a chance to watch, but I'm looking forward to it. You dropped that very dramatic preview clip on Twitter, so I'm excited. But what's going on with what you're doing with investing or not investing?
I guess just firstly on the interview with Brett, I think there's a hell of a lot more to like with KPG than to dislike, even with the news and stuff that's came out. I should say, just to clarify, I saw the press release on Brett's compensation update about 10 minutes after getting off the call with him, so I hadn't seen that pre-podcast. And I mean, I did chat to Brett for probably half an hour.
That was strategic. They dropped that right after the interview was over.
Either that, or I just hadn't seen it. Brett did mention on when we were recording that the international expansion announcement was probably going to go out that afternoon, I think, but I hadn't caught the compensation one. And I think, Frank, there's no actual deals that have been announced right internationally yet.
No, nothing that we know of yet.
Yeah, I mean, just chatting to Brett kind of after we stopped recording, it sounds like he's pretty aware of wanting to make small bets first and learn as much as he can with one firm, sort of thing, before swinging for the fences. So I think that is a good sign. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. And I'm actually chatting to Monsoon Probri tomorrow, so that will be quite interesting. That'll be the next podcast episode.
That's awesome.
So that'll be fun.
Got a good streak going.
Yeah, for sure. And I haven't announced it anywhere yet, but I'll just mention it here. I've got Jake Taylor in a couple of weeks as well, so that will also be cool. I'll collect questions and stuff on Twitter at some point, but I'm trying to get the podcast revived during December. So. Outside of that, investing wise, there hasn't been, in the past couple of months, there's been a bit of activity for me. I have bought Hingham for the first time, small position, have added to other stuff a couple times through the year, but nothing too crazy happening over here.
Are you first you're studying banks, you're studying, and then you kind of switched more to oil companies? You got anything else in the education pipeline?
No, and I still haven't bought anything oil related. I think I get the investment thesis on a lot of the stuff. I just struggle to build conviction is kind of what's stopping me with that one. I'm sure there's situations where I'd make the bet, but haven't got there on anything yet. No, life's been a bit hectic over the past few weeks for me, so I haven't been doing a lot of investment research out of the stuff I've already mentioned on here.
But just house stuff or family or?
House stuff. Been traveling a lot for work.
You mentioned
locking up lots of Air New Zealand Air Points dollars, which is nice. But I haven't been home a whole lot, so that's why the YouTube content and stuff's been a little inconsistent the past few weeks as well. That's just been a bit crazy.
What's going on with Thor?
What's going on with Thor? I was actually just pulling up some of my 2022 transactions before. I've added to it a couple of times this year. So I bought a little in April and about $78 a share. And then bought quite a lot more for $69.99 just because I had that not so round number and for my limit order, and it hit at that value. So that was a couple months ago. So I think it's up a little, but it's a long-term position. They're doing reasonably significant buybacks, so I'd kind of prefer if it came back to earth a little bit. And I'm always open to buying more of that thing. So. I guess in terms of the actual business results and their last, I think we should be getting another quarterly update maybe in the next couple of weeks, I think. But last quarter they ate through a pretty substantial chunk of their backlog. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it's kind of the first time we've seen that since COVID, basically, where their backlog went through the roof. I think they're definitely probably going into a down cycle here, but I obviously still like it long term, and the prices come down more than enough to reflect that, I'd say. So,
did you follow the Alibaba earnings at all?
Yep.
Anything stand out? What stood out to me was more buybacks.
Yeah, more buybacks. the one thing that always eats at me with Alibaba is how much stock-based compensation they do. So the buybacks aren't actually moving the share count down that materially, but hopefully that keeps coming down. I'm still not convinced we can read too much into it, just with zero COVID policies and all, the things happening over there at the moment. So I'm still sort of just sitting on it, but I think we had modest revenue growth and quite a bit of operating earnings growth from various cost-cutting initiatives, basically. So
the cloud being flat was weird and kind of
it's a continuation of it's a continuation of ByteDance moving to AWS and Oracle, I think. So
gotcha.
I don't know that they disclose the exact numbers around how much revenue they're losing from that cancellation, that churn, but
it was significant. There are estimates that some people have made as high as a third of their revenue at the time. So, but obviously the growth that hopefully is still happening underlying there kind of covers up that big loss. But yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
I saw that Ant Financial got a fine recently, like a $1 billion fine or something like that. And in the article, it said that this might be the final fine with all this stuff, and it might open the door to an Ant Financial IPO. So that was some potential good news. That would be quite the catalyst, because we own a third of that, don't we?
Yeah, I still think there's been no change on the massive bump in capital requirements that happened a year or so back, though, right? It's definitely not as good a business as it was when they were initially trying to IPO.
Yeah, what did people? It was going to IPO for about, was it 300 billion or something like that, and our stake was worth 100 billion.
I mean, it's all just rumor mill stuff, but
yeah,
I think valuations in that realm were thrown around.
What is it? What is Baba worth now? It's worth 238 billion. So okay,
yeah,
and it's up quite a bit recently. 38% in the last month.
It's been a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, wait, I bought it at the low. That's right. After I talked to some people, so yeah, it's been a good month with China.
I think with Ant Financial, it's safe to just call it a zero, and
but the thing
hope for some upside from it.
But if it IPOs some point, it's good news. I also think about it that way, but it's like seeing this, it's like, yeah, maybe it might not be a zero, and that just shows their enterprise value is even lower than we think it is.
Yeah,
it's an enigma.
All right, Jack, let's turn the tables here, and the host now becomes the interviewee.
We're all team here.
We're about to grill you.
Grill me, okay, sure.
We've all been talking public stocks. What have you been doing?
Yeah, not public stocks. I've been doing a little bit of tweeting, and then about yesterday's video, I talked about how I'm under contract on a super chat. Real quick, we interrupt this program to bring you this super chat from Adrian, longtime listener. I love how Jason has stars in his eyes when he talks about his fellow punch card crew. Vote number 1, Jason. Yeah, Jason, we do appreciate.
Vote number 1 for Adrian's picture right there. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We still keep that money. That doesn't go to you, Jason. Just
that is entirely true. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, I think an overwhelming percentage goes to paying StreamYard fees, but
that's definitely our largest expense.
That's what they keep telling me. Accounting, Jason. It's the accounting.
Yeah. We are profitable, but we're not swimming in it. StreamYard swimming in it.
We're all significantly below minimum wage in most developed countries.
Yeah, probably. I wonder if we actually build out the hours. I'd be curious. Do we dare do that exercise? Punch card annual report, annual meeting.
It's about the knowledge. It's about the camaraderie. I look forward to this show, whether I'm on it or just a fan watching it. You guys, you guys are doing something special here. So
it's beautiful. So it's not about the investing; it's about the friends we made along the way. Well, thank you, Adrian. We appreciate it. So, as I was saying, I'm under contract on a small business in Houston. It's in the cleaning niche. Because I'm still under contract, I have not closed. I can't go into too many details. So I'll be kind of talking around the details. But like I said, cleaning niche. It's got a couple employees. It's been around for a handful of years, got really good reviews, and I'm getting it for, when you back up the equipment costs on this business, I'm getting it for about 1.7 times free cash flow over this last year. So where do we go from there? There's been plenty of details to talk about that I could.
So Jack, I know your big the big motivation here from watching your videos, it sounds like, has been to get some cash flow coming in.
Yep.
So
Offense. I like to call it offense versus defense.
Offense versus defense. And like when you close and like in month one, end of the month, this business's bank account, is there going to be more cash in there than the beginning of the month? Like, are you getting cash flow?
Yeah. They're servicing. So it's a simple service-based business. It's cleaning a particular type of cleaning. And both between residential and commercial clients. So you should get plenty of demand pretty much year round. It's a little bit seasonal, but not very much because stuff always needs to be cleaned. One thing about when you're looking to buy a service-based business in particular, one big thing is really the email list of former and prospective customers. So I was asking how many people they have on the list, and they've got thousands of emails, and then they've served, we'll call it around 1,000 people over the last year. So that's effectively 1,000 active customers, and then many thousand more warm leads, if you will, or super warm leads that maybe have bought in the last year or two. So that's a huge part of what you're buying. And then you're also buying the reputation. And in this case, there's some equipment involved as well, like some vans and cleaning equipment. So when you back out the equipment costs, that's where I was getting that 1.7 times free cash flow multiple. It's under 200 grand, so we're not talking about like millions of dollars in free cash flow, but it's definitely enough to move the needle for me. And to what you're saying about offense would be, I'm trying to focus quite a bit less on sort of what I would consider defensive assets, publicly traded stocks, real estate that certainly do well over the long term. But I really view them more as wealth preservation, more so than true offense. Offense being like driving income, because the income is what you then use to buy the defense, which is more tax efficient stuff like long-term stocks and real estate. So I'd rather put much more of my effort towards that offense now that I can then use to go buy more defensive assets later. And plus, in running a business, unless I'm like blind, I should become a better investor in the meantime, because I'll actually be in the trenches, running a business, running a team, even though it's a small business, but it's a business nonetheless. And it's a skill that's going to be very worthwhile. Whether it's a bad experience or a good experience, I'm going to learn something from it. So those are some of the primary motivations for all of it.
So what are you going to do with that cash every month or every quarter? Are you going to grow this business, or are you going to pay off debts or invest?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be financing the purchase. So pretty much everything in the first year. I'm still working as an attorney, so a lot of that's going to go towards it too. But I'm going to be trying to pay down the debt that I used to acquire this in the first probably year or two. But that's really the goal, is just to get completely deleveraged or very close to it, at least on the business side of things, and then from there maybe focus a bit more on. We'll call it more expensive growth, like where I'd have to get more trucks and equipment, more capital intensive growth.
That's very disciplined of you, because you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I want to have options. And if I'm super leveraged, I'll feel pressured to not, when you take that debt off the table, you have more flexibility in a bunch of ways. I don't maybe be as pressured. Let's say disaster strikes. I get fired from my job like 2 months from now. I still have all this debt to worry about. So now I'm kind of in a weird position where, okay, yeah, I have excess cash flow coming from the business, but a lot of that's going towards the debt. So like, do I want to go on the offense again with a job, or do I focus on growing the business? I'd rather just clear the debt, and then I'd be a lot clearer in that decision.
Yeah, it's all upside at that point. So
right. Yeah. And or much more likely upside, we'll say. way less downside, maybe is the better way to put it. So a lot of this first year, especially while I'm still working as an attorney for sure, which is the plan going forward, is to clear debt, put myself in a stronger position, while slowly growing the business with its own operating earnings. Because I'm taking out a good amount of debt to actually finance the initial purchase. So taking out more debt to grow it, you're just adding debt on debt on debt. So I want to be careful not to do that. because I got plenty of debt relative to my net worth, and I'd rather kind of consolidate from that point of view a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
But
Couple
it's
of
exciting.
questions.
Go for it.
Yeah, this is super cool, Jack. You got me motivated when you started talking about this to like look at a bunch of random local businesses near me.
It's
I
fun.
haven't found anything too interesting yet,
But it's fun.
it is cool. Yeah, for sure. I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First one is, I mean, how much time is this going to require for you to be like in the business? Obviously, when we buy stocks, there's the research process
Right.
and keeping up, but we're not in the thing day to day. And secondly, I'd just be interested to hear about like what the due diligence process is. You know, with public companies, obviously we have years of annual reports. Presumably they're audited by, you know, certain firms and so on. Like, what was it like going and presumably looking at the accounts for 1 year or, I don't know, multiple years of some random owner operator in Houston? Like,
Yeah.
what did that
Yeah.
look like?
So what was that first question again? So it's due diligence.
How much
and
time
then-
is it going to suck up?
Oh, yeah, time. So to answer the time question, I will say that this owner, at least from what I've found, has done a pretty good job of delegating things. So really, the time he's spending is more towards growing the business, less so than maintaining day to day. Granted, there is work to be done, of course, and the more work I put into it, the better the outcome theoretically, as long as I'm not a terrible manager. But it's gonna be a part-time job in its current state. So I'm going to be putting a decent amount of hours. We'll call it 10 to 20 per week, most likely. Probably more at the beginning as I'm getting onboarding and everything like that. So it'll be a lot, but kind of a lot of the time I'm spending towards, say, what I might have been spending towards public stock research is going more towards this now. And I think the goal would be to get it to the point where I get enough scale to where a general manager of some sort might make some sense. And they would take on a lot of the day-to-day operations, and could actually grow it themselves too. And I would focus much more on the higher level strategic decisions. At least that would be kind of the longer term goal, but that's probably a couple of years from now. Maybe quicker. We'll see. So that's kind of that. It'll be a part-time job, and I could definitely scale that up to full-time if I feel like it makes sense. You get it. That's the nice thing about a business, is that you can be pretty flexible with it in many cases, especially once you get things delegated well. Now, as for the due diligence question, that's a good one, because some businesses are a lot more well kept than others. I will say this business is being sold. A lot of businesses that I looked at were being sold by people retiring. Maybe they've been doing this business for 40 years. That was not the case here. It's a sort of newer business run by a guy who actually has a few businesses, I guess, and he wants to focus on another one that he has different obligations for. But that was kind of his motivation to sell, to actually focus more on the other one he's doing. So kind of depending on who you're buying from will determine what you're really looking at. But when it comes to records, yeah, you're not going to have like audited financial statements, but you'll probably have tax returns. So unless you're committing tax fraud, that's usually a good start, where you can take a look and verify expenses and income, unless they're not reporting things. So there's a bit of trust involved, but if you discover fraud, you do have a lawsuit, I guess, but trying to avoid that. But you're looking at tax returns a lot, asking for recent profit and loss statements, asking for potentially like receipts from different expenses, especially major expenses. You can get a lot of things if you just ask for them, and then you'll figure it out. You'll figure out as much as you probably can from there. But ultimately, when you're buying 100% control of the business, you're going to really, your past performance only tells you so much. You still got to run things decently well, so that there's plenty of room for change. It's not as though like, okay, it produced $100 grand in cash flow last year, now it's going to produce another 100 grand next year. It's not that simple. As we all know, the future is always a little bit difficult to determine. So, but the longer the business has been at play and it's been printing the same amount of cash flow for a while, then, that's helpful. So this business has been pretty stable for the past few years. It's a newer business. Like I said, it's about 5 or 6 years old. And in the last few years, it's been pretty stable. They haven't been doing much growth because he's been focusing on his other business. But there's plenty of room to grow because it's a simple service, and it'd be more of a matter of getting more people on board, upping ad spend and all that. So don't know if that answers the question, but generally just asking
Yeah,
for stuff, receipts, tax returns. That's probably about the best you can do.
Jack, are
Yeah.
you gonna do it again in a few years when this thing is delevered? Are you gonna sell this to buy a bigger business? Or are you gonna buy a second business and run two businesses? What's the plan?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. So there's this person, maybe some of you guys have seen her, but there's a person called Cody Sanchez. She has a really great channel where she talks about small business investing, and she runs this huge portfolio of a bunch of small businesses where she's like a limited partner in a bunch of them, maybe funds it with whatever amount of money, makes some strategic changes, and then just has huge cash flow because you can pick these things up pretty cheap. But then it becomes a lot of headache, because you're dealing with the control of all these businesses. But so that's kind of like one school I'm considering. I kind of like the idea of creating an ecosystem of like, you got a cleaning business, you got a roofing business, an HVAC company, and then that's kind of like your ecosystem around like a real estate investing operation. You now have like all your expenses in house in a way. So that's kind of one very long-term thing I'm thinking about. But at the same time, you could make a lot of money with a scalable business like this, just doing the same thing, maybe adding a few kind of ancillary services. Let's say one side of the business does power washing and another does some other kind of cleaning. You could add different sorts of services to it to drive more revenue that way. But there's plenty of room to grow here. So I do want to be careful. Speaking of spreading myself too thin, I don't want to do that, especially early. But yeah, we'll cross the bridge when we get there. For now, I just want to focus on kind of stabilizing this business at a higher level than it's at now. So yeah.
Jack, was the when you got into the financial statements and so on, was the cash flow pretty much as advertised? Like I noticed, even just in the half an hour I spent at looking at random companies, there's all sorts of like unusual adjustments they put on the actual profitability of the business on these ads and stuff to inflate the price. How was that sort of thing for you?
That was a big thing for that was a big thing I was running into as well. There's a lot of adjustments. Like you'll see the advertised earnings, and then you see the way they got to those earnings might have been a little weird. So in this business's case, there were some like not really business expenses that were written off. And in creating kind of the advertised earnings, they're like, hey, these aren't actually like business expenses. So when you back those out, here's why. So I asked for proof, like, okay, can you prove that that's actually what they are? So I guess there were like some other vehicles involved that weren't in the sale. So he kind of was backing those out. So like, yeah, you just got to ask for proof. And if they can't provide you the proof, then you probably have to walk away. It's really just a matter of asking. And sometimes it's hard to know what to actually ask for. And that's where like stuff like YouTube can help, and just learning about different business formats and ideas. I really like the channel Upflip. They do a lot of like small business breakdowns. Fantastic channel. They do these like intense, like 30 to 40 minute videos where they're just asking like a small business owner about how they run their business, how they scaled things, what software they use. So that was kind of helpful for framing how I ask questions about this business. Like, how many emails you got? What software are you using for invoicing? Do you have a call center? Do you have an office admin? All these sorts of questions I thought to ask. And now I can also come up with a plan a bit for when I take over. If and when I take over, I got to close. It helped to kind of frame that. So that's kind of where I was coming from there.
Very cool.
Tom, you getting into this private investment situation?
What are you seeing, Tom?
Oh no, Jack just got me interested in it. When he said I can buy this thing for 1 time's earnings, that like piques your interest, As
a value investor, you're like, what is going on here? And there are good reasons for it, because with a small business, like a very small business, we'll call it under $1 million, or even up to like $10 million under that. We'll stick with under $1 million. It's too small for like private equity usually. Or there are some operational deficiencies that make it really annoying. Like maybe they're doing stuff in paper and nothing's digital. So you're going to have to go through a transition there, or maybe there's an employee issue, or maybe there isn't an employee and it's all running for the owner. So like there are plenty of reasons why these things sell cheap. But if you're willing to put the time and energy in, you can definitely fix that. Everything's ultimately fixable, right? But and plus liquidity is a bit more difficult because because there's less potential buyers. You need someone who's willing to take on the time yet still has the money to do it. So it's kind of a weird sort of group. So that's kind of I see Luis just dropped the super chat here. Before finalizing the purchase, Jack, make sure to verify the number of bots. I did think of that when I asked for the email count, and I'll get the official list as we approach closing. But you got to make sure you're actually getting what they say you're getting. Elon knows well.
Speaking of Elon, we're getting a lot of comments on a particular topic.
So, Jack, you bought a business with cash flow. Frank bought a check. Frank, I don't even know what this is about. What's going on
Frank
with
is getting
blue
roasted
check?
in the chat by, I'm assuming,
hilarious.
one dude with a bunch of accounts, because this has been like an attack.
So, Frank, you have a great Twitter, Lone Wolves Frank, over 25,000 followers.
It's great.
So
what's going on?
Pay for the blue tick. Like, I understand the cringe behind paying for a blue tick, and there's a lot of comments about the validation or something around that, which is ridiculous. Okay. The reason I paid for a blue tick is pretty simple, and hopefully it works, and it might not. But I had about 10 to 12 imposter accounts in the space of maybe about a year that I've been really had some kind of notoriety on Twitter, like maybe over 10,000 followers. That's when they kind of started. And the blue tick, since doing it, I haven't seen one yet. And there's no reason why an imposter account couldn't just pay the $8 a month as well and continue to run the same type of phishing scams or whatever they are doing. But I reckon I would get a DM almost every single day asking, is this account you? Here's an imposter account. And sometimes they're sharing the same ones I've already seen and reported. But the blue tick is an attempt to try and stop that and only that. So $8 a month for the potential of eliminating that risk, and people like maybe the people making these comments in the chat getting scammed. That's the reason for paying $8. And
it's such an awkward system. It's so awkward.
But yeah, I couldn't care less about I don't even think it's cool to have a blue tick, even if I earn it by building the fame up to have it. It's pretty pointless, arbitrary kind of thing where it doesn't really say anything about anyone. But
it's so awkward in our like finance space because there's actually so many scams that it actually makes sense to have it. It's when it's like, journalist clout or something. Even I could see that being important too, that it's actually the person, not a fake report. But yeah, it's a little goofy what they got going now, but anything to pay for Elon's vision, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Haven't they like stopped Twitter Blue for a while now?
Yeah, it's like in and out or something. It's been fun over on Twitter, I must say. A little bit of chaos and a lot of drama, but like kind of fun drama. I've enjoyed it, at least on the finance corner.
Yeah.
Frank, you're at 25,000 followers. If you don't really have to go up by that much to get to be at 100,000 followers, that's kind of a crazy number.
Yeah, the growth's come pretty quick. I think it's the easiest platform to grow on, at least in the early stages, like without having an audience, to build a relatively decent sized audience. Twitter's the place where I think ideas within a niche kind of spread very well. I certainly found it easier to grow on Twitter than I did YouTube or any other platform I've ever used in the past for anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I dropped a thread today, and it's crazy how like quickly like thousands of people will see it, or at least impressions. Whether they actually read it is a different thing, but the amount of reach you can get is pretty impressive, even with tiny accounts. Like I got less than 1,000 over there, and partly because you guys help by retweeting stuff. So, but it's still pretty wild how much reach you can get.
Frank, you shared the Li Lu Charlie Munger's Almanac introduction from the Chinese version the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I read that when I was on my trip. I read it in bed in the hotel room. It was really good.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd come across it as well. I was just trying to dig up. Sometimes I like to dig up really old historical things about investing. I think the history of investing and investors is cool to read about. So I was just digging through any old Leo's speeches or articles I could find, and I think that one was actually linked on the Himalaya Capital website. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Speaking of reading, slightly off topic, but I just finished Risk by General Stanley, I think it's McChrystal. Someone in the Discord, I forget who, mentioned that he met General Stanley, which is kind of cool. But it was an okay book. But anyways, the whole book was about like risk assessment and risk analysis for a variety of settings. And I was thinking about doing this exercise where I go through like proper worst case scenarios. Like, what if my wife and I lose our jobs? What if my stock portfolio falls like 90%, or, just like crazy, like terrible, like outcomes? And then what would I do or have to do to react to them? And then try to find like real weak points that I should address sooner than others. It seems like it would be a good exercise.
I did that recently.
Yeah, just like a real like worst case. I've never really done it. I always just kind of think, I got reserves, or like I'll be fine. I'll just hold. But like, what if it got real bad? Like, what would it actually look like?
I did that with Racist when I decided to go really big, and I said, okay, for whatever reason, people are wrong.
Triggered the margin thing.
Say that again.
Is that what triggered your margin decision?
Well, no, that was more like, I just don't want to be pressured at all for the next 5 years. I want to be in control here.
Yeah.
But with the risk thing with the Racist, I was like, okay, look, I'm going to take it from the 25, 28, whatever it was, to the 33% of my portfolio. And when I mean portfolio, I mean like for real, like 33%. And I was like, let's say we're just totally wrong about this company and something really bad happens, and the worst that can happen, it goes to zero. I was like, well, let me look at what I would have if that happened, and my life wouldn't change. It just wouldn't. I'd be doing the same thing every day. And then I looked at, well, what if we're partially wrong about this company and it goes down by half and I have to sell it at that point? Same thing. I'd be fine. Nothing would really change. And then I go, what if I'm right and it goes up 5-7 times? Then I'm like, okay, that would actually change things in like a really cool way. So I ran through that exercise, and that's how it gave me confidence. But taking yourself to the worst possible thing that could happen, I think it's probably a good thing to do with every investment.
Yeah, or even just, I was thinking like making it like a quarterly update or something. Just I was probably going to make a video out of my first exercise, like going through all of the bad scenario, or at least a few bad scenarios.
Yeah, like if you hold oil, what if oil goes down big time? What would that do to your portfolio and other things?
You could do it, but you could do it both with just one investment, but also just like from a macro, like whole portfolio, whole life perspective. What if a catastrophic like expense comes up? Like what's really going to happen? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
That maybe you don't think, that it's hard to think about regularly.
What was his advice in the book? Just to do it, or were there things you could do when you think about it?
It wasn't specifically a finance book. I was just thinking about how I could apply it to my own interests and stuff, and that's kind of what I thought of. His was much more about like, he's a military guy, so he talked about different operations and what went wrong and like what was ignored and what wasn't, and same with like war games as well, and how certain scenarios were completely ignored, and then the one side got embarrassed, so they factored that into future plans. That sort of framework. Talked a lot about a particular pathogen as well, and the response to that and different risk assessments there. But like, so just that kind of general risk framework was when I was trying to figure out how to really apply it to something that would be useful to myself selfishly. That's kind of what I was thinking of.
Frank, did you do that when you were sitting at like 40-50% with Kelly Partners and go, what if this thing goes down by half? What would that do to my overall portfolio? Was that a factor on why you brought it down?
I think that's more of a factor going into a position rather than out, I guess, for me. But yeah, I do think about risk as much as I can with any investment, and probably even think about catastrophic risk more than most people might. That's an assumption, I guess. But I guess as any company you hold, whether it's in the US or China, I know people like to say there's catastrophic risk that could happen in China, but there's the same thing in the US. And yeah, it's probably a lower probability you have to assign to that. But in any investment that you make, I think you have to really consider all possibilities and the chance of that outcome kind of taking place. So, yeah.
Well, I'm getting the lights from Jack. He's flashing the lights from the back saying he's going to kick me off soon. So I have to take, I have to take this opportunity because I've got Tom in front of me. And Tom's a guy I used to know. Tom doesn't answer my texts anymore. Tom doesn't have me on the show. So when
Try getting a blue tick. If you get a blue tick, people might respond, Jason.
I'll get that blue tick and include Tom in my tweets and see if he retweets and goes, thanks, man. But Tom, it's really good to see you. You're my go-to Ceritage guy. And all of our go-to Ceritage guy. I bought this little Rocky company because it looked like free money this afternoon. Like it looked like people are going to make an offer for it very soon. Tom, I'm just kidding with all that stuff. But because every time I joke, Tom doesn't laugh either, so I don't know if he's upset. I just look up to Tom so much. I'm sorry, Tom. Tom, sorry. Ceritage. I'll get to my question. Ceritage, Tom, it's looking like free money here. Like it's looking like the risk is going down quickly. And what I want to ask you is, if they pay down their debt a couple $100 more million and sell some properties, and then are able to extend the Berkshire debt to 2025 or whatever it is, and we're not at risk with this debt situation, doesn't the reality that the real estate is worth a lot more than $12 a share, maybe 18 to $20 a share, isn't that becoming like a really real thing? Am I looking at it the right way? That's what I wanted to ask you. How are you looking at Ceritage right now?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much got it right. Like in a way, it's kind of like a merger arbitrage type situation, but not really. Like it's a liquidation. They're turning net assets into cash that they're going to distribute, basically. So yeah, I think the more certainty we get over time, the more real that net asset value hopefully becomes, and in theory, the market should price it.
Well, am I allowed to get excited because everything else is down, and it's like we have this situation where this thing might not double from 12, but like go up 60 to 80%, like within 12 to 24 months. It's like, it's pretty cool to see this happening. Am I allowed to be excited?
You can do whatever you want, Jason.
Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that how I guess I should take that. Anyway, pretty cool, and it's becoming real as these properties get sold, I think.
Yeah. Jack, I just put I just want to correct you on something, Jason.
Yeah.
You said before I don't retweet you, and you said, why don't you go, thanks, man? And well, here we are.
He did it 2 minutes ago.
Is that better?
2 minutes ago. It's a Band-Aid.
Well, I'm thrilled. I just tweeted back at you.
Thanks.
The scars are deep, but at least you got a Band-Aid now.
Tom, you're doing a video on Ceritage soon?
I think I will. Yeah, we were talking a little before this. There's a guy on Twitter.
This is what Tom does with people on Twitter. He's like, I don't need to remember their name. They all follow me.
It's his surname. I'm blanking on. I think it's David Maradi, something like that.
Yeah.
Does he have a blue tick or?
No, he's actually he's legit enough. People follow him without the blue tick.
There's no credibility if you don't have a blue tick. So I don't know.
But he's the guy who's been. If anyone's followed him on Ceritage, you know who I'm talking about. He's putting out like almost daily updates of properties that Ceritage is selling that are kind of dropping off the website. And he actually shared some of his research with me. He had a call with John Gorelli, the CFO, pretty recently, and there's some kind of interesting takeaways from that. So I think I'll do a video going into.
It's David Maradi at DM10011.
There you go. Yeah. So I think I'll do a more detailed video on it. But overall, it seems like properties continue to be sold, as we can kind of see from the dropping off the website. We saw a filing from Ceritage just 2 days ago. I think they paid off another $100 million in debt. The CFO on the call didn't want to revise their range or anything. Said sales are trending above the low end of the 1850 to 2375 kind of range. So there's some interesting stuff in there. I think I'll make a more detailed video on it.
Last question. Do you think it's safe for me to, like, I'm preparing to sell here because if this thing goes up to 18 to 20, I want to get out if that's what we're going to get from it. This thing went from 5 to 10 like instantly that time. It went up 100% in one day recently. If they extend that Berkshire loan, or if some really good news comes out about one of their crown jewel properties and they sell it for a ton, do you think it's possible that this thing could move like very quickly if some good news comes out? Like it could go from 12 to 16 or something, or 18 like in a couple days like it did recently. Do you think that's possible?
Well, it's possible. Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time trying to think about what markets might do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Come on, Tom, predict the stock market.
Yeah.
Give us a prediction.
The video would do better if you did. What the exact date Ceritage will go to where it needs to go.
Okay.
Well, with like the face thumbnail,
God.
all shocked. That'll do it.
That
All
face
right.
is when I know a YouTuber has just totally given in to YouTube and the algorithm, because there's no self-respecting person that would do that in front of the internet, but a lot of people do it, and they seem to get rewarded for it. But
Yeah,
you give something up when you do that.
When you see people making those faces and thumbnails, you just know that they've paid $8 for a blue check mark. You know what I mean?
That's a great spot to wrap it up. And also shout out to Jonathan paying his weekly dividend for the Omaha meeting coming up in May. So we're getting closer every week to the Berkshire annual meeting, where we will do something. Details to follow. Join the Discord for the most up-to-date updates. Otherwise, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks again, Jason, for
thanks.
Yet another short notice dropping in. We appreciate it as always, and we appreciate you appreciating us, of course. And otherwise, everyone, check out the all the stuff in the description below. Both the discount links down there; those are affiliate links for us, so they can help out. And Jason just left us right as I'm doing the outro. He doesn't want to hear it. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Till next time, everyone. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to Punch Card Investing. The contents of this show should not be used as investment advice or as a recommendation to invest in a particular security. Please consult with a licensed investment advisor if you need investment advice. All investments carry risk and the potential for monetary loss. Thank you, and see you next week.